Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker by profession, and my topic is Take the Doughnut, which for me is an expression that means carpe diem, seize the opportunity. Well, the opportunity I'm seizing right now is doing a Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast because, frankly, I just want to be able to talk with people about this show, and I've never been able to before. So we are starting off this coverage with the very first episode. There are 40 in total. Well, we are looking today at season 1, episode 1. This one is titled IO, which is a term that means input output. And if you can't tell, I'm not a computer expert. I'm not a tech expert. So for those who are, if you heard something you didn't like in how I just said that title, write a comment, share with me, because that's what this is for. We're all here to discuss this show. So the title, I think, is IO. It originally aired June 1st, 2014. And here's a quick description of it. Joe McMillan, a fast-talking salesman and enigmatic visionary, comes up with the idea to reverse engineer his former employer's PC into something better and cheaper. All he needs are the right people to help him accomplish this. The former employer that's mentioned or alluded to is IBM. So what we're going to do here is we will do a scene-by-scene breakdown, but just some general notes on this show before I get into that. This first season is, of the 4 seasons, overall the lowest ranked on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think that's because, look, for me, this show is perfect. End to end, it is perfect. But in order for it to be perfect, you have to have those story arcs, you have to have those character arcs. Well, the first season needs to set those up. So for those of you who maybe it takes a few episodes to really start getting into a groove with it, that makes sense, right? Because we need somewhere to start if we're going to have somewhere to go. This first episode is really about establishing a lot. And as I was going back through it and taking notes, I'm able to think about what's coming ahead for the show. And I can't believe how many things they planted in this first episode that really bear out across the rest of the series and, season 4 in particular. So rest assured, if there's anything that's being sort of laid out for you here, pay attention to it. Really savor these moments, even as they're building the story, because it matters. We're going somewhere with all of it. Now, okay, if we go scene by scene here, my format, since this is my first one, is to go scene by scene, to talk about each scene, and then to go through a list of music that we heard in the episode. I'll also pick out a favorite quote. And as I get a little bit further along, if there are any comments or feedback that I get within YouTube comments on other videos, I'll also be sure to mention them here. I don't have that today, so we'll just start with those first few segments and take it from there. All right, let's talk about Halt and Catch Fire, season 1, episode 1. All right, we begin, and they really lay out for you the point of this show right from the beginning. What is Halt and Catch Fire? They're going to put for you, on a computer screen, the definition of Halt and Catch Fire, which is this: an early computer command that sent the machine into a race condition, forcing all instructions to compete for superiority at once. Control of the computer could not be regained. Now, to me, that really also describes the entire plot of the show. It describes all of the characters. What we're going to get here, we're seeing 4 main characters outlined, really 5 if you include Bosworth. And for me, they are all computer commands of their own, competing for attention. They're strong personalities. Pretty much every character in this show has a strong personality. And so they're going to be butting heads and clashing with ideas and intentions. And so to me, the title means a lot of things, and it really captures the spirit of what we're going to get in this show. So right after we get that definition, we're going to fade to Armadillo. We're going to do a nice slow fade to an armadillo slowly walking across the street as we see Joe McMillan's sports car speeding up. Joe hits the armadillo. Joe gets out of the car. He slams it with disgust. He looks at the armadillo like, you got in my way. What is your deal, armadillo? And honestly, that feels like the correct way to open things with Joe. Now, if you're a huge animal rights advocate, if you're upset about the armadillo, you're not really supposed to like Joe right now. And so your feelings are appropriate. You wait till you see what Joe does to people. I mean, this guy, one of the things that really strikes me, even in this first episode, is that Joe has these ideas. Joe is about creation, but he is also about destruction. And we are absolutely seeing both of those things being laid out for us here in this very first episode. And they're starting it with destruction. That is where Joe's story begins. This armadillo is no more. He has ceased to be, and it is because of Joe. And so, I think they've started this off correctly, because Joe is not an easy person to love in the beginning of this show, and they're trying to give you reasons to understand that straight away. Now, from there, Joe was driving somewhere. Where was he driving? Well, he was driving to a college class where he is going to be guest presenting, but he's not your typical guest presenter. He's not a person who's coming in for the day to teach the students, which is probably what he told the professor that he'd be doing. What he's actually there to do is to recruit. And he's found a really interesting salesman-y way to kind of mask that intention. He begins by saying, let me start by asking a question. It's the very first thing that Joe McMillan says. And he's in front of this room full of students, and he starts asking questions about the experience that the kids in the room have with computers, with engineering, with coding. He wants to know exactly what they've accomplished, and he wants to start mentally narrowing down his recruitment selection. He's scouting. He wants to find somebody for what? We don't know. In the middle of this, Cameron walks in late. She's punk. She doesn't care. Frankly, she's smarter than all the people in this class. She's more talented than all the people in this class. She knows it. And so she shows up late, not really caring. She sees this guy at the front of the room who was introduced to us in the beginning as, having come from, he was an instrumental part of the process of building, at IBM, of being part of, the debut of the IBM PC was what he was part of. And she missed that part of the introduction, but somehow still knows it as we go through. So he's going through question after question about what experience people have. At one point, he uses a term, very large scale integration. And she's like, come on, nobody calls it that. VSLI, right? So she's challenging him. She knows her stuff. By the end of a series of questions, there are two people who still have their hands up because they've actually built all of the things he's mentioned. Joe asks a question, what do you think computers are going to be used for in the future? Where do you think this is all headed? He, points to the first guy up front with his hand still raised, and he doesn't care. We don't care about the first guy. That guy, not relevant. Then he goes to Cameron, and Cameron, she says, well, I think that computers are going to be connected together in the future. She mentions through phone lines, but, just connected together in the future. And this is something that we're actually going to see a lot of this develop over the seasons. So it's kind of amazing that she throws this idea out so cavalierly right at the beginning of the show. So Joe's obviously impressed, because our next scene, we're going to cut to a tavern that Cameron obviously frequents, a tavern that has the arcade game Centipede, which she loves so dearly. Joe is in this tavern with her, trying to recruit her, get, sort of selling to her, trying to get more information. One of the things that's really important about Cameron is she's all about sort of gaming the system. She's all about figuring out the smartest way to do things. She's not just about learning code. She's about breaking it and making it better. So one of the things she's done is she loves this game Centipede. She doesn't want to have to pay for it. It doesn't have a lot of money. So she's got a quarter that she put on a string, and she's stealing games of Centipede from this tavern, and obviously has been doing that for a very long time. And Joe sees that she's doing that, and he kind of smiles to himself, because everything that he's seeing is just affirmation that he is talking to the right human for what he's trying to accomplish. What is he trying to accomplish? We don't know yet, but he obviously has designs. So Joe's trying to sell to her, and he's like, look, do you want to do something that matters? She's like, nobody that matters is paying attention. He says, I'm paying attention. Cameron's like, yeah, but do you matter? Good question. That's what Cameron would be thinking, wouldn't she? So, she now goes into her understanding of the industry. And, this is a person who, hasn't been in the industry, but has seen it. She's been operating on the fringes, and she's saying, look, why would I want to be part of this? Everybody rips off of everybody else's ideas. It's not about original thought. You work for IBM. What would you know? Joe reveals, I don't actually work for IBM. So he gave the professor a statement to introduce him with, that was true, that he was an integral part of the debut of the IBM PC, but he doesn't actually work for IBM. So we're starting to see that Joe kind of like stretches truths, and he finds his way into the conversation. So now they have each other's attention. Cameron's like, okay, you don't work for IBM. What is your deal? What is your deal? But before they can figure that out, they're going to have sex. So they're going to find a back room of this tavern, and they're going to start doing it. And in the middle, Joe's like, this doesn't mean you actually get the job. And that kills the mood. It kills the mood for Cameron. And so she just kind of throws him off of her, and she says, you mean we're not in love? I mean, the thing about Cameron is she's got a lot of walls up. She's very protective of herself, and she brings out a humor, but she really does have those walls up for so much of the show. So I think it'll be really interesting to see like how that evolves over time. But this is where it begins with Joe. They really, again, like this term of halt and catch fire, these really strong forces sort of competing for attention. These are both strong people, and they're obviously attracted to each other's strength. And like, where does it go from here? How is this possibly going to mesh? So from here, we're going to go to the opening credits. First time we're ever going to hear these opening credits. Some stylistic notes. I mean, I think they nailed it with this. First of all, I might get the pronunciation wrong, but the theme song is done by Trent Moeller. It's definitely got like an 80s feel, but it's also captures that digital vibe as well. And then all of the graphics, all of the visual elements, it's a lot of reds and purples and pinks, and it's a lot of sort of abstract images, little glitchy, a little digital. So we are going to see a few of the main characters in the credits, but their images are very distorted. I believe what we're seeing there is Joe, Gordon, and Cameron. I don't think Donna's in the opening credits. So we've got, I think, it's a theme that really captures the spirit of this show and the theme of this show for me. I think they nailed it. We're going to head from there to our introduction to Donna. So, and Gordon for that matter. So we're going to get Gordon sitting in jail. What has Gordon done? Well, Gordon was drunk. He had a little too much to drink. He got up to no good. And he's been bailed out by his wife, Donna, who was watching the kids. So in order to get Gordon, she had to bring the kids. Kids are in the car fast asleep, or at least trying to rest. And Gordon comes out of jail. He says, ain't no jail cell can hold me. It's the first thing we hear from him. And so, yeah, in a way, that kind of describes their life right now and their marriage as well. Like, this can't hold me in. Something that he's fighting against, something that he's trying to break out of. Donna bailed him out. Now they're in the car, and he's saying he drank too much. He does still have his job, which is great news, but nobody cares about him there, which is not great news. Gordon's life has become a bit humdrum to him, and he brings up something that is a very important point in Donna and Gordon's story in their back life. He is still miserable in being drunk and speaking your truth. His truth is that he's still miserable about a machine that didn't work at a demo. They open this up as generically as they possibly can, but they're going to keep giving us more details about this in this episode. So he's sort of ruminating on how 1980 wasn't a particularly good year. He's saying, hey, I remember when your dad said he couldn't lend us more money, and that was the death of our dream. And Donna's listening to all of this, and she's like, pull yourself together, man. You have got work coming up. It's like 4 hours away that you have to be in the office. So that is Gordon and Donna. That's where we're starting. Lot to pull apart in this marriage, but I think in this dynamic, but I think let's get into that the next time we see them together. So the next scene we're going to see the office the next day. We're going to meet John Bosworth, who we will come to know as Boz. And he is the guy who runs, like, the general manager of a company called Cardiff Electric. Now, just a quick note here. This show, season 1, is set in roughly the Dallas area. So this is the North Texas Silicon Prairie. You had whatever was starting to happen or whatever was happening in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. This was Silicon Prairie. So, there's tech stuff happening here. It's a bit of a different culture, a bit of a different space. John comes from that culture. Remember, Joe came from IBM. That company was based in New York. And so he's sort of moved into this world. John Bosworth, Texas good old boy, he's interviewing Joe. Joe has sidled up to Cardiff Electric, and he's gotten on John Bosworth's calendar, and he says, I want a job here. I want to be your sales guy. And Boz is skeptical. He's like, look, why would I want a guy from IBM? IBM has crushed a lot of companies, but it's not going to happen to Cardiff Electric. Not on my watch, sir. So, Joe's continuing to schmooze him. He's like, don't you want a guy who can do the job? And Bosworth is like, all I need is somebody who's going to kill it with sales. What he actually says is someone to blow the balls off the numbers. I don't even really know what that means, but I think it's your basic example of Boz, even in this episode where he's furious for most of the episode. He's frustrated. He's trying to assert his dominance, and yet he still kind of comes off funny to me. And it's expressions like blowing the balls off the numbers that does it. But he'll keep doing this. He just feels like Joe is very corporate. Again, it's not Boz's style. We're going to see through this show, Boz is kind of like a storyteller. He's very relationship driven. Joe's very idea and sales driven. And that doesn't always work, right? So, okay, Boz is looking for sales. He's looking for the proof that this guy can bring in sales. Well, Joe has brought that in. He didn't bring a resume. What he brought is his W-2 from IBM, where he can show the staggering number in the commission area. And he's like, hey, you want proof that I can do this job? Here it is. John hires him on the spot. He doesn't check his references. He doesn't do any background checks or research. He says, sure, you report to me. I'm the boss. I'm the big man on campus. I'm the big guy at Cardiff Electric. And go do your thing. Go make some money for this company. So now we're still sitting here thinking, what is Joe doing at this company? Why is this guy here? What is happening right now? Why is he recruiting people? What is his goal? Because it's very clear that he has designs, but what are they? It's a mystery even to us as viewers at this point. So we're going to get the next piece of this puzzle in a moment here. He walks out of Boz's office, now having gotten the job, and he's going to walk by Gordon's desk, and he sees Gordon tired as can be, pouring sugar into his coffee, trying to stay awake for a job that nobody cares about him at. And now we're going to go to Joe's apartment where, it's evening, it's after work. Joe's got the org chart for Cardiff Electric and he highlights Gordon's name. Did Joe come to Cardiff Electric because he wanted to meet Gordon? He clearly already knows who Gordon is. Okay, so he's targeted Gordon. Whatever that means. We're going to close this scene with an overhead shot, which I thought was interesting. I'm not sure if I have an idea what I think that means. But we're kind of panning away from Joe and we're getting the overhead view, maybe the God view of Joe. I don't know if that means something. All right, we're going to go to the office the next day. And remember, Joe's targeted Gordon, so he has to put his plan into motion, whatever that is. And part one of the plan is park in Gordon's parking spot and make sure Gordon sees it happen. Gordon rocks up in his car. Joe's in his spot. He's like, hey, that's my spot. I'm A16. This is mine. This is mine. He holds his little A16 badge. Does Joe care? No, Joe doesn't care. Joe intentionally parked in that spot. He's going to stay in that spot. Gordon's going to have to park pretty far away now, which he does. He gets out of the car. He's a mess. He's dropping food. He's having to eat the food he dropped. He's a disaster. Gordon is just this guy, like he's just being walked all over here. We get into the office. Part two of Joe's plan steps into place here. He's calling A16. He wants the guy whose parking spot he just stole. Hey, you're on a sales call with me. You're my sales engineer who's going to be doing the sales meeting with me. So he specifically picked Gordon. He's calling him into a meeting. And now we're going to go to that meeting. We're in a nice restaurant. Joe is pitching to a few guys who are at the table. And he's trying to convince them to buy Cardiff Electric. And these guys are not convinced because IBM, it's the bigger company. There's more of a guarantee, it's a safer choice. And here's the thing. Joe's pitching to these guys, but he's really pitching to Gordon. I mean, maybe it's 50-50, but you will see that at particular moments, he's turned his attention to Gordon and he is trying to convince him of something. Joe is saying things like, you've made just enough choices to stay alive, but not to matter. You want to be more, don't you? He's saying to these guys, buying a IBM is the safe choice, but it's not innovative. It doesn't get you to the next level. But what he's really saying is, Gordon, stop living so safe. Gordon, you can be more than you are right now. And Gordon is deeply resonating with some of these things that Joe is saying, partly because Joe is not actively saying them to him. It's in the context of a sales call. So I think if Joe were saying it directly to Gordon, Gordon might bristle at Joe at this moment, but instead he's taking this as, this is probably something I need to be listening to. So of course, as Joe goes in for the close, Gordon screws it up. And, these guys are not going to buy, they're not going to seal the deal at the table. Joe's not so happy about it. They go back to the office. Joe parks in Gordon's spot again with Gordon in the car. He gets out and he tells Gordon in no uncertain terms, next time I move to close, here's what you do. You shut up. And he says it loudly. He interrupts everything else that's happening in the parking lot in that moment. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Clark home. We're going to get a Donna, Gordon, and family scene. And The Clark home is sort of, it feels very of that time. It feels like we're sort of, we've come out of the 70s, we're in the 80s. It's a very sort of brown, muted tones home. There's nothing particularly inspiring about Donna and Gordon's home, and maybe not about their lives right now either. They're sort of in this place of, this is what we're doing day to day, and maybe we were coming off of something interesting that we alluded to in the previous scene, but right now we're in a brown home. And the song that we have playing in the background is a Creedence Clearwater Revival song, CCR, Lodi. We're hearing the "Stuck in Lodi" again is the is like the lyric that's really sticking out for me as I'm watching them in this home. Now we're meeting their kids for the first time. We've got Joni and Haley. Joni is the older daughter. Haley is the younger one, and their speak and spell doesn't work. Their little toy speak and spell doesn't work. And Donna takes a look at it. And the thing is, in this first episode, you could say, is Donna the nagging wife? Is that what we're doing here? Is Donna meant to be the character who nags Gordon? Gordon, don't do this. Gordon, don't do that. No, actually, Donna is going to have an incredible arc. Right now, this is where she is at in life. And we're going to see in this scene, Donna's got a lot of potential, and Donna's had a lot of, experience in the past. There's a lot that Donna could be tapping into here that's sort of buried under the surface. When Joni and Haley give her the speak and spell that isn't working, Donna dismantles it. She's got a lot to do. She's supposed to be making dinner. She's supposed to be, but her kid's toy is broken. They give her this toy and she doesn't not know what to do with it. She knows exactly what to do with it. She knows how to open it. She knows exactly where the screwdrivers are to get, she is up on this tech. So she is sitting there dismantling this thing, but has a lot to do. And she's sort of looking at Gordon like, are you going to do something here? Do you want to help with this? Do you want to help with the dinner? Help with something? Gordon's just there drinking a soda. He's disengaged from this situation and she's not loving it. Joni and Haley are fighting over who broke it. Donna says, I don't care who broke it. We're just going to get it fixed. Okay. That's where Donna's at right now in her life. She yells at Gordon to help her. Go get me the salt. Do something, Gordon. Do something. And that is the state of the union for their marriage right now. We're going to go back to the office. And Joe is showing Gordon's own article from a journal called Bite from the past, where Gordon had this, Joden, look what happened there, where Gordon had this whole feature article, this whole quote about, what he sees for the future of the industry. And Joe obviously read it at a time when he needed to read it. He locked it in his brain. He said, I want to meet that Gordon Clark. I've got a thing. He decided on a thing to work on together with Gordon. And now he's finagled his way into Cardiff Electric, finagled his way into Gordon's life, and he is not going to leave. He's not going to leave. He's not going to take no for an answer. He's going to make Gordon know him and work with him. So Joe is going to convince Gordon with Gordon's own words. He's like, you wrote a treasure map here. Don't you want to make good on that? I want to meet the guy who wrote this article because there's a project I want to discuss with him. He's really challenging Gordon. Like, take charge in this situation. Okay, Gordon? Gordon, his reaction to Joe at this point is just to be resistant. He's in a rut, but he's happy in his rut. He wants to be in his rut, and he does not want Joe pulling him out of it. Joe says, an important line for this show. Look, I mean, this isn't just about computers. This is about working together. Computers aren't the thing. They're the thing that gets us to the thing. Joe is really tapping into the old Gordon, the Gordon who wrote this article, the guy who had a vision of his own, the guy who believed in building something. And he's trying to pull that Gordon back into the real world. We see Gordon just looking at the article and he's thinking about it. And then we go back to the Clark home and He's thinking about it again. It's still on his mind. Meanwhile, Donna's taking care of the kids. She's pulled Joni aside. She's teaching her about the hardware in the Speak and Spell toy. And we know between the fact that she was able to completely dismantle the Speak and Spell, and by the fact that she's able to teach Joni about every single component of the hardware in the Speak and Spell, we know Donna has skills. What is she going to do with them? We don't know yet. All of this is interrupted by a phone call. Joe wants to talk to Gordon. He feels like he needs to, just keep moving this forward. Gordon's like, don't want to talk to him. We're going to a movie. So the family goes to the movie. The Clarks go to the recent Star Wars movie that just came out. And who shows up when they're walking out of the movie? Joe, drinking a soda as if he's been there. I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a normal guy hanging out at a movie theater. Oh, you're here, even though you told me on the phone that you couldn't talk because you're going to a movie, but I was going to be here anyway. He just has that look about him, like, this is casual. This is a casual run-in. Donna looks him up and down and is like, I don't know if this is a casual run-in, but he still pulls Gordon aside. And, Gordon, who has already mentioned to Donna this general idea that Joe is pitching to him, just the idea that Joe wants to work with him. She's like, I don't know about this. Well, Joe shows up, pulls Gordon aside, and now he's going to get specific about the idea of how he wants to work with Gordon. He says, reverse engineer an IBM PC with me. Let's make the next thing, but let's make it from the idea of the IBM and of the IBM machine. And Gordon's like, that's a no, hard pass. First of all, it's illegal. Second of all, we'll be sued because it's illegal. Third of all, we'll lose our jobs because it's illegal. Fourth of all, Apple and IBM, they've got this market locked up. In fact, there are a whole bunch of companies who have this market locked up. We add Commodore and Tandy and Texas Instruments to it. I actually wasn't familiar myself with Tandy, but all of those other companies do ring a bell for me. Look, I was born in '83, which I believe is the year that this is meant to start. So my recollection begins maybe a little bit after this should have been, but a lot of this is ringing a bell for me. Gordon, after all of this, he says, look, you missed it. We all did. Like all of these other competitors, all of these other companies, they're doing the thing already. We have missed it. And he's saying that to sort of shoot down Joe's idea, but it's also, I think, what he's been saying to himself ever since his demo didn't work. This is why Gordon went underground. This is why he doesn't even remember writing the article or the quotes he said in it, because that Gordon is the guy who missed it. And he's just living his life now at his desk, drinking coffee and, trying to stay awake through the workday. All right. So Joe's like, you know what? I hear what you're saying. That's why we don't do this as ourselves, because we can't compete with those big guys. We do this as Cardiff Electric. Gordon's like, how's that going to happen? Joe says, leave that to me. I'll force their hand. Gordon says, nice idea, but this is a no. My family's in the car. I have a family. They're counting on me. I can't do this with you. So he's still very much resisting what Joe is trying to put in motion. But we get into the car on the way home, and Donna's like, hey, can we talk about the fact that Joe McMillan just stalked us to the movie theater? What's that? What's that all about, Gordon? Can you break that down for me? Gordon says, okay, so what he wants to build a computer. Donna's back goes up immediately. We can't do this again. We are in financial trouble because of the last time we tried to do a thing like this. The way she's talking about this is really giving us a lot more information about Donna and Gordon's past. This idea that they worked together on something, probably the demo that failed, that they've already introduced to us, that it didn't work, and now they're experiencing hardship, and she is very much trying to keep the home in order, and Gordon's in the space that he's in mentally right now. They're just sort of in survival mode. And then they name the project that didn't work. It was called the Symphonic. So they worked on this machine called the Symphonic. The kids are like, hey, what was the Symphonic? Because we need a little exposition here to help us connect all the dots. And so Donna describes the Symphonic as, it's a silly computer mommy and daddy built that didn't work. That's the story Donna's holding on to. Gordon turns around abruptly in the front seat, looks his kids straight in the eyes and said, the Symphonic was the best thing your dad ever did. Woo. So, okay. Gordon's really attached a lot of his self-esteem to the Symphonic. Donna is having to minimize that because she has to get on with life. She has to keep the household working, and thinking about the Symphonic doesn't get them there. And so this is where these two have gone from that joint failure that they experienced. Now, we're going to go from here to a scene. It's sort of cutting between a couple different scenes. We're going to have part of it in Joe's apartment. We're going to have part of it with Gordon working on Joe's idea in his garage. All of this is set to the song Complicated Game. And it's an interesting, I guess you would call this a montage, because Joe has picked up a baseball bat, something that looks like it was an item gifted from, I think, his dad. And he picks it up and he starts swinging the bat, playing baseball in his apartment and smashing things all around the apartment. Remember, Joe, creation and destruction. You can't create something unless you've destroyed. You can't destroy something unless you've created. They're two sides of the same coin. And so him smashing stuff in his apartment, pretty par for the course with him. We don't have enough story built up yet for us to see him smash the story, but we can see him smash his apartment. We can see him smash windows and lights and walls and whatever else, right? But at the same time that he's doing this, Gordon is actually fixated on Joe's idea, and he's bought a bunch of equipment, and he's starting to think about, like, how would we do this? He starts tinkering around his garage, playing with some things, seeing how he can make it happen. The song that's playing is pretty depressing. Okay, like if you just think about the lyrics that they give us, it's an XTC song, Ecstasy. I don't know how you would actually say that. Complicated Game is they're breaking down a story about how your choices in life don't really matter. They give us a couple of verses of it where they talk about, which side should you part your hair on, which way should you vote? Oh, it doesn't matter because somebody else is going to go along and do their own thing anyway. Ooh. Also, pretty resemblant of how this whole show is going to we're going to see this play out a lot of times on this show, and they're really setting up a lot for us here, even in these music choices. All right. Next morning, Gordon's on the ball. Gordon's been thinking about Joe's idea. Joe had a bit of a rough night, but Gordon did not. Gordon is fired up. Gordon parks in his spot. He gets to work early. He parks in his spot, and he defiantly waits for Joe there. And Joe pulls up, sees Gordon parked in his own spot. Okay, that's good news. Gordon's pulling machinery out. It's like, yeah, let's work on this thing. So expensive to buy all this stuff, so let's work on it. Let's make good with it. So we're going to move from there to Gordon's garage. Gordon has excused himself for a family trip over the weekend, and so he's cleared time for Gordon and Joe to secretly work on this reverse engineering an IBM PC project in Gordon's garage. And so they kind of give us, now, look, if you're not a tech expert, and I am not a tech expert, this whole sequence is a bunch of techie stuff that I cannot really explain to you of how they're going to go through this process. But it still functions in a way that I can understand from a story point where it's like a sports montage. It's like that part where they cut to all the training those people do before they get to the big game or the big match or the big fight or the big whatever. Well, this is Joe and Gordon trying to figure out how to reverse engineer an IBM PC. Now, what we find out is that, look, most of what's in the IBM PC is open architecture. Anybody can use it. There's one specific part of it that is proprietary, that IBM has copyrighted, that is the guts, the heart of this machine that makes it IBM's, and that is the BIOS. What that is, look, I don't know. If you're a tech expert, go ahead, tell us in the comments anything about this scene. Like, I'd love to know whatever you want to tell me about this sequence to help us understand it. But basically, identifying where this chip is located, identifying where this piece is located and how it's broken down is part of the process. So they're going to do all kinds of things. They're going to be fiddling with things. They've got an oscilloscope. They're recording pin voltages. They're finding chips. They're writing down contents of addresses. They're using hexadecimal code. I can't explain any of these things to you. I'm just using terms they used in the episode. But basically, they have part of this process is they have to transcribe 65,526 addresses. And we're going to see this is going to take them all weekend. Then they finish that part. They have to hook things up. They blow out the power. Gordon gets a new monitor. I mean, there's a lot of steps in this process. They're finishing up, they're printing out all of these codes and addresses. And now they have to see if what they've been doing works. And looks like it did. Again, I can't explain to you why, but yay, success. They figured it out. So good. Gordon has produced a book of IBM PC ROM BIOS. He's like, this is it. We can do our own chip now. Except Donna comes back. It's Monday. Whole weekend went by. It's Monday. And, Donna, she sees Joe and Gordon in the garage doing things that Gordon really probably shouldn't be doing. And she's not happy about it. And Joe's trying to sell his way out of it. Donna's like, quiet. I want to talk to my husband, because she needs to yell at Gordon. So she speaks to Gordon privately. She's like, what are you doing? You lied to me about why you didn't go on this trip. You're risking everything. Think about what you're risking. Gordon's like, what I have isn't enough for me. Ooh, ugh. That doesn't feel good. If you're Donna, you don't really want to hear that. Donna absorbs the personal affront. She says, well, look, I never had the burden of believing that I was some misunderstood genius. Oof. Lot going on in that marriage right now. Like, on the surface, it seems like, ooh, happy family, husband, wife, 2 kids, fixing a speak and spell, going to Star Wars movies. But there's a lot of baggage there that they really need to sort through, and haven't had cause to do that because they've just been brushing it under the rug. We are going to go to the Cardiff office, where IBM, specifically a guy named Dale Butler, who's the senior VP of sales, he's on the phone for John Bosworth. Because IBM has heard about this little project of Gordon and Joe's. They're not one bit happy about it. So they, this guy, Dale, he pulls Bosworth aside on the phone. He said, okay, so we heard Joe is alive and well, and he's with you. He's been missing for a year. He departed under mysterious circumstances. And, the thing he's doing with you, not great. We don't love it. In fact, I'm going to put you over to my in-house legal advisor. So they put counsel on the phone. She's like, we have a problem here. And now we're going to see a scene at the Cardiff office with the owner of Cardiff Electric. Nathan Cardiff and John Bosworth have been talking through the phone call that just happened with IBM's legal counsel. Joe and Gordon have been called into the office, and Boz is like, we are in major trouble because of you two knuckleheads. You ripped off their flagship product. They don't love it. We've got an issue. because Joe used to work at IBM and because Joe and Gordon currently work at Cardiff, now because they've done this project during that time, it's Cardiff's problem. It reflects on Cardiff Electric and they have to handle this. IBM's legal team is going to come in tomorrow. We need to do something about this. How did any of this even happen? How did Joe and Gordon working on something secretive in Gordon's garage become common knowledge to IBM legal counsel? Joe's like, oh, well, I can explain that. I called them and told them. I told them. You what? So I guess this is what Joe meant by forcing Cardiff's hand. Gordon is furious after this meeting. He's like, look, I was fine before you. Sure, miserable, but fine being miserable, okay? Joe's like, no, get angry. This version of you that's angry, get angry like that. Feel something, be fired up. You're a builder, okay? I remember your symphonic demo. It inspired me. It was ahead of its time. Look, a year from now, you're going to thank me because you're a builder. You're re-becoming the thing that you're meant to be. Gordon's like, ugh, you again. Not happy about it. We're going to go to the Clark home, and with all of this energy that Gordon has, he has fixed the speak and spell. He has programmed his oldest daughter's name into it. Hello, Joni. He has it spell out daddy for the first word. Donna's looking at all this. She is melting a little bit, but she's still kind of angry about, Gordon is in the doghouse. He has a lot of things to fix. So these are some of his steps in the process. Then he goes to Donna, who's melted. Her heart has melted just a little bit. He apologizes. He's like, look, I've stopped the project. I need you. I need, I appreciate my life and I need you in it. Donna's going to give him a hug, but I think Donna realizes that the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't put the toothpaste back in. Try putting the toothpaste back in the tube and see where it gets you. She says, mid-hug, she says, just build it. Dream big dreams, go make the thing great. But here's the deal. If you're going to partner with Joe McMillan, you need to partner with me and this family as well. You need to respect both partnerships. Gordon says, okay, deal. All right, so now we're going to go to the Cardiff office where their in-house legal representative has been called into a meeting. He's like, okay, so I've been doing some research on this. I figured it out. I've got the legal strategy. You can't fire Gordon and Joe because if you do that and you toss the project, you're basically admitting guilt. So you have to go the other way with it. You have to lean in the other direction. Now, you're going to say this is wild, but you actually have to say to IBM, you've been working on a PC this whole time. You need to make sure that nobody who's currently employed by Cardiff or was employed by IBM is working on it, and they need to create their own BIOS without having any knowledge of this project. And we need to figure this out before the IBM team shows up. So this is quite a lot. And, Boz is heated. He can't believe all this. Are you serious? We have to fix this by leaning in further to the problem. He's like, this is the idea you came up with. Counsel's like, it was Joe's idea. Like, this is what his designs have been this entire time. Everybody in this room is now realizing, this guy is pretty conniving, pretty manipulative, and he will go many levels deep to get his things done that he wants to do. Joe is like, I just needed you to realize that you had no other options. Like, you're there now. You figured it out. This is what we're doing. Anyway, if I had just been a salesman for you, I would have made you a little money. But now Nathan Cardiff blows up at him. He's like, don't sit here and try to tell me you're doing me a favor. Have you ever had this happen to you where somebody's like, I hurt you real bad. I made a big mistake and you are the recipient of that. But this is a favor. See, this is why this is better for you. What you really want in this situation, if you're Nathan Cardiff, is an apology. And apologies don't include, this is actually a good thing for you. Nathan is like, I get your chutzpah. I like it. Uh, you're not going to pretend this is a good thing for me. No, that's where I draw this line. Look, nobody's loving this choice except for Joe, but this is it. This is where they are with it. But the big question is now, like, who do we find who can code this, who can build, who can be the engineer on this, who can build this that we don't already know? What ideas do we have? Joe, of course, started this episode by scouting at a college and he found Cameron. So his natural idea is, I'd like to vet somebody. Let me go let me go see about a girl. Shall I? So Gordon and Joe go to the tavern where Joe and Cameron had hung out earlier in this episode. Cameron still playing Centipede, still using the quarter on a string. We're hearing Wannabe Manor in the background, and we're really getting this sort of punk vibe out of Cameron. And other patrons want to turn. People have been waiting for an hour or more to play this game. She's, completely monopolized the machine. The owner finds out she hasn't even been paying to play. And he throws her out of the tavern just as Joe and Gordon are walking up. Joe and Gordon are like, great, we'll take you to a Mexican restaurant. Let's close the deal here. Let's figure this out. Gordon is not loving this choice. Gordon and Cameron are strong personalities, not really loving each other in this moment. Maybe Gordon feels a little threatened by her. He doesn't feel like she's the person to pin his hopes on and basically his safety on. Cameron opens it up and she's basically sabotaging this meeting from the beginning. She's like, I had sex with Joe. You know that, right? Like, this is not all a professional thing. And Gordon's like, oh, can we just find, there's got to be somebody else, right? Cameron's thinking, somebody else? You think you're going to get somebody better than me? So this starts to bring her to the table a little bit more. Cameron starts playing hardball. She'd have to drop out of college to take this job. That's a risk. Joe throws out, well, what if you make 20 grand a year? She's like, double it. Gordon can't believe it. My wife makes 15,000 a year at Texas Instruments. Cameron says, well, then I feel sorry for her. I wish that earlier in my business, when I had to do a lot of negotiations, I wish I brought this energy to them. I'm still trying to bring this energy to them. I have a thing or two I can learn from Cameron in this scene, I think. And I feel sorry for her because what I'm worth is 40,000 wild. So obviously that negotiation is successful. And, we're going to see Cameron on a bus on her way to Cardiff for her very first day. We're playing a Clash song. She realizes maybe I shouldn't be in a tank. She changes into a sweater, probably one that hasn't been washed in a good long time. It's about as fancy as Cameron gets, this sweater. She gets up to the receptionist. The receptionist looks her up and down, is like, clearly this isn't a person I need to be addressing. Joe opens the door for Cameron. It's like, no, this is actually the person who's saving our company. So now we're going to get a quick scene, a legal rigmarole scene where Cameron has to swear to many statements about never having anything to do with IBM machines or, reverse engineering them. We're going to cut between this and Donna Clark walking around the garage, looking a little worried and, not really sure what to do next. So now we're going to get one more scene with Boz laying down the law. We've got Joe, Gordon, and Cameron at the table. The team has been assembled and Boz is laying down the law. First of all, there's going to be no bullshit. What constitutes, but whatever I say it is. The hours, if you're wondering, they're from this meeting's ending until you die. Never leave, never stop working, fix this problem, and then get out of here is basically what he's saying. We're stuck with each other. That's the situation. Cameron wants to know who's her boss. Gordon and Joe both say they are at the same time. Boz is going to pull Joe aside and he's going to say, look, I'm on the hook because of you. I didn't check your references. I didn't check your background. I said yes, probably shouldn't have. And now you've backed me into a corner and I will never forget that. As this show goes on, there will be a journey between Boz and Joe. And it's really important to see where they're beginning as well, of like, you feel like maybe Boz is a guy who would hold a grudge. And Joe has given him a grudge to hold. He said, here's a grudge, please hold on to this for me. So this is really a factor that, it's going to create tension in their dynamic, but they're going to have to make the best of it and get the job done. And after all of this, Gordon and Cameron and Joe are going to watch as the IBM team, the legal team, files into the building, person after person after person after person. It's imposing, it's threatening. Joe, he's not exactly staring them down. There's almost a little bit of like there's almost a vulnerability behind the staring them down. Gordon doesn't know what this is all about, but this is where we end it. Joe is staring at the IBM team as they file into the room. So this is our first episode. Oh my goodness, there's so many things for us to explore. What we're getting prominently in this episode is the Donna and Gordon dynamic. We're getting the Joe and Cameron dynamic. We're getting the Joe and Gordon dynamic. We're getting the Joe and Boz dynamic. We're really setting up those relationships, and we're starting to see through that what the starting point of each of these characters is. Some of these characters, all of them are sort of looking for what's next in their life, but some of them are more actively seeking that than others. And this is where we lay our story. This is where everything begins for us. Music. I've mentioned some of the music along the way, and I just wanted to really have a proper segment on this, a short one, but just to list off some of the songs that you can definitively hear in the episode, because if you want to build your own soundtrack for this or your own playlist, I want it to be easy for you to do that. So first one that I heard was a song called Up All Night by the Boomtown Rats. It plays in that first arcade scene where Joe and Cameron are talking. We're going to get Lodi by Creedence Clearwater Revival when we see the Clarks and their household get that first shot. Complicated Game, Ecstasy. Joe destroys his home and Gordon's, working on Joe's idea. What a depressing cut of that song it was. But I think that was what we were meant to be gathering from that scene or that montage. Then Wannabe Manor by the Vandals. That's another tavern scene where Cameron actually gets caught and thrown out. And then we're going to get a scene with Cameron's first day at Cardiff and on the bus, where we're going to hear The Magnificent Seven by The Clash. And then the last one that I was able to distinguish was a song called Cirrus by Bonobo. You can let me know how to pronounce that. It's when the IBM team is filing into the office. This show, the songs just absolutely are curated effectively, perfectly, both lyrically and feeling wise, and really pulling the songs from the time period that we're looking at. So those are the first ones that you can add to your playlist. And of course, now for our favorite quote of the episode. Look, there are a lot of really good ones. There are a lot of really fun ones, especially when you know the show and you're looking back and thinking about these relationships. But there's really only one quote I can choose for this first episode because it's a resonant, important one. It has some pith to it. So Joe saying, computers aren't the thing. They're the thing that gets us to the thing. What else do you choose? I'd love to hear what quotes you want to pull out from this episode as well. But I think this one's a bit of a showstopper for me. So it felt like the one that I needed to bring up here today. So there's no feedback to share for this first one because I just started this podcast. But again, this is meant to be a discussion. So do you have feedback, questions, comments? All you have to do, literally just put them into the YouTube comments section. That's all you have to do. If it's something that's a little spoilery, put again spoiler at the top, do a couple line breaks, and then put your thoughts so that people who haven't seen the show before don't get spoiled. But if you haven't seen it before, no matter who you are, I want to know what's striking you. If you have knowledge about things, especially things that I know nothing about, we need you. If you know about tech, if you know about coding, if you know about fashion, if you know about, I don't know, whatever you know about that I'm not bringing up or don't understand properly, I want to hear from you. I want to understand this show better. I think we all do if we're here. So that is the very first episode, season 1, episode 1, IO. We're off to a fun start here, and I can't wait to get into the next one with you. So until then, enjoy Halt and Catch Fire. Bye.